Again, thank you all for giving up your morning calls or giving up your time with your teams this morning to come and spend in our presence. And really, my vision for step change in the short term is all about engagement and collaboration. And we can't do that if we're not together. So please take an opportunity through this morning's time in this lovely building to understand the impacts of major accident hazards on all parts of our business, from the contractors through the well side and also the operators. Because we all know, and it's worth reinforcing, that one major incident, regardless of whose badge or logo it happens to be under, will affect every one of us in this room. So it's good to understand that we all have our part to play. So before I get in, I've got a very short 15-minute session here, but I find it very important to recognise the folks sitting at the back of this room who are Step Change in Safety's major accident hazard group. They have put an immense amount of preparation in for today, and also in creating the major accident hazard work packs and roadshow. They've done a fantastic job, so I'd like to put your hands together for the team at the back of the room. And also to our guest speakers, who will put a completely different context from many different angles on today's event. We all recognise we have a responsibility. There's nothing like hearing it firsthand what it actually looks like. So they'll be introduced individually, and we'll do a short bio on them as well. So let me start by saying I stand here today having been lucky enough to survive a major accident hazard, and it shaped me going forward for the last 31 years. But this is not about me, this is about us, this is about the future, it's about how we prepare. We all know we have accountability and responsibility, whether that's our OIMs and asset managers in the rooms, or whether it's our MDs or CEOs. We all have responsibility for managing and preparing and responding to major accident hazards. I'm going to talk about the C's of safety culture, something I genuinely believe makes a difference to your organisations as they prepare and qualify how prepared they are for major accident hazards. Why? Why do we need to do that? Because a strong safety culture will get you through the potential of having a major accident hazard. The 6 C's will allow you, if you choose to use them as reference material, to sense check your organisation. They will allow you to combat memory fade, which we are all susceptible to. And more importantly, they will certainly address some of the normalisation that happens at the sharp end of the sword when people do things every day and they become normal. By just using this reference material when you engage and communicate across your organisations, you will sense check what goes on. It targets the areas identified through research into incidents, causal effects, and in my own experience, the things that will lead to catastrophe. So the purpose of sharing the C's with you is to provide you with a reference material to support you as you validate and you sense check and mitigate measures and put them in place to ultimately respond to a major accident hazard. I like to put this slide up because this, for me, qualifies what memory fade looks like and the lack of ability to learn as organisations. Longford happened some 10 years after Piper Alpha. For those that may not recall it, it happened in September 1988 in Australia in an Esso plant. Started off with a gas leak, ended up being a catastrophe. If you read what it says in the slide, and I'm not going to read it to you, the telltale signs were there. They didn't reach and they didn't penetrate organisations enough for people to respond. Today's event is all about allowing you folks to discuss how you may respond, what your best practice might be, but more importantly, to highlight the effects on your organisations, the human angle, the legal side of what it looks like if you have to respond to one of these. So we don't particularly learn very well. Engagement and collaboration is what makes that effective if we choose to do it. So again, I'll leave you with this slide and ask, do we really retain the learnings or does memory fade really creep in? And reading this, suggest it does creep in. So, recognising the incident causal factors. These should come up automatically. I'll not read them to you. These are the things, ultimately the six topics that you should be considering when you do your site visits, when you have that operations meeting that doesn't happen as often as it maybe should, when you're having one-to-one conversations. These 6 C's, as I call them, and the one below, culture, which is the 7th C. Culture depends on the values and the beliefs within your organisation. And they start at the top. They're set, hopefully at board level and at operational C-suites. How you communicate those and verify them through your organisation to your offshore leaders and beyond to the workforce is absolutely vital for your preparation for potential MEH incidents. These are the things you look out for. You know, what you need to do, again, I'll nip through this. This will tell you what you should be looking to do. You should be looking to confirm the intent, the commitment exists. You should be ensuring that change management processes are in place and they're robust. Just don't accept they are. Make it your business to ensure they are. Communication and safety, critical communication. I'm going to jump to that one because for me, we need to learn to over-communicate on vital and critical information. And that doesn't mean you pass it on and leave it alone. You need to think about when you go offshore and you do your site visits, what is the critical things that really matter in your business, and are you actually qualifying them at the coalface, as we say. So these 6 C's I'm going to leave you with, and I'm happy to share this slide with you in a pack. And just be aware this is being filmed today, so you'll have access to this as well. We asked you to fill in some questionnaires in advance of this workshop, so we had the context to do the breakout sessions. So thanks for those of you who took the time to fill them in, and it was a reasonably good response. I'm going to touch on 2 of the slides as part of my 6 C's presentation. One of those was about validating any concerns that you may have around major accident hazards. And as you will see, onshore and offshore have differing approaches, in particular around the use of process meetings, audits, and process dashboards. I want you to think about that when you go into your work groups. Why the difference? If it's because one group are seeing a better response or a better uptake in it, let's share that in the groups. Something for me that I noticed was site visits are fairly well relied upon for communicating and validating major accident hazard information. Think about how much time you actually get to spend at the site. Is it sufficient to over-communicate and provide each other with safety critical information? Perhaps not. I know from doing day visits offshore or overnights, there are 100 things you want to talk about with your key people offshore. So perhaps you really need to think about using some of the other tools available to validate your concerns. If you look at communicating, which is the next slide, you'll see again, offshore visits are very high from an onshore leadership point of view. Think about your agenda when you go offshore. Can you really, really over-communicate or emphasize the topics that are so vital around major accident hazards in a day trip or an overnight? I suggest not, because I've known how much of your time is demanded of wandering and walking through your plant, your rigs, connecting with your people at the coalface. Do you really have enough time to discuss major accident hazard preparation? Are we really using all the opportunities available to us in this digital and very IT-orientated business we're in to communicate and over-communicate around these things? Don't let it be memory fade. I would ask you to take those 2 points about validation and communication and take it as food for thought and take it back inside your own organizations. Take it to your asset managers, your rig managers. Ask them how much time they actually commit to doing this And the next time you go offshore yourselves, do a timeline. Qualify how long you really spend on the important parts of your business. Are we missing an opportunity to use different means? Use this and use my reference material and this event to reaffirm and, where possible, improve your approach to communicating and validating key and critical, mission-critical information around major accident hazards. Before I hand over to Chris Flint, who's joined us today, thank you, Chris, I want to leave you with a short passage given by Lord Cullen, which summarises Occidental's response and preparedness when it comes to sharing critical information. Ultimately, the lack of sharing and response resulted in our largest major accident.
In my considered opinion, Occidental can have been in no doubt as to the grave consequences for the platform and its personnel in the event of a prolonged high-pressure gas fire. A memo dated the 18th of March 1988 stated that structural integrity could be lost within 10 to 15 minutes if a fire was fed from a large pressurized hydrocarbon inventory. A property loss prevention report to Occidental dated the 14th of October 1986 commented on the pipelines to and from the platform. Further, in 1987, Occidental's Loss Prevention Department prepared a preliminary report which described various scenarios which could weaken the platform's structural steel support members and the means of firefighting in each case. One of these was an oil or gas riser rupture. In the case of a rupture on the pipeline side of the emergency shutdown valve, the ESV, no direct action could be taken on the platform to stem the flow of hydrocarbon. These passages, from reports to Occidental themselves, could be used to describe what happened in the disaster.
So there we are. The telltale signs were there. Ineffective response and communicating of safety-critical information really didn't take place. As I said, I'm going to hand over soon to our regulator, Chris Flint. And as the regulator, Chris should be our conscience. He should not be seen as an instrument to avoid us doing what we want to do. He's here as our conscience to ensure that we do what we have to do to avoid major accident hazards. So I'll leave you with the question as I hand over. Are we really being made aware of the telltale signs? Are we really responding accordingly and in a timely fashion? Or are we pushing it in front of ourselves? Take that question with you throughout this morning. I welcome again your attention, and I hope this is a very productive meeting for you. Thank you very much. Well, how do you close an event like this? It has been so much information and sharing of good practice in such a compressed time frame. As always, I'll do my best. What I want to make clear is some of the data that was pulled from your survey has not been presented today because of the compressed agenda, but it will be available in a full slide pack. So I'm going to touch on just a couple of things. I'm going to skip a couple of slides as well because I'm conscious of the time. Very briefly, you can see that the onshore wells group are of the opinion that we share very effectively, whereas the onshore contractor group are in almost the opposite place. So what does that tell us? It tells us that we have got a lot to do in engagement and collaboration across our entire sector, across the operating community, the wells community, and the contracting community. We may genuinely operate or feel we operate in different aspects of this business, but let's really be reminded that we all undertake most of our business on extremely hazardous environments. So we have an impact on each other's business. Again, the amazing and very high quality work that the MAH group have done in creating these videos and awareness packs can't be left to sit on the shelf or in your inboxes. You can see from an intake point aspect, offshore operations are truly using these videos, which would suggest they're using perhaps at safety meetings or their weekly safety meetings and so on and so forth. I think, again, we need to stop disconnecting what goes on offshore with onshore. We should just be as likely to have an onshore weekly safety meeting that you use these videos at, as well as an offshore one. I think it was made in a couple of different presentations today that there's not one part of our workforce, whether it be supply chain, IT, accounts, or offshore, does not affect what goes on offshore. And I think it would do no harm to ensure that you understand what major accident hazards are and the barriers are around bow ties and so on. So if your companies aren't doing it, and you're all members of Step Change and Safety in this room, please start using the products that you invest your time and money in. They are intended to make our industry a safer place on and offshore. This, does it ring alarm bells? I think it frustrates me more than anything else, but hey, we can do something about that. You can only do something with the things you know. And this slide screams at me that we have not done a good job in working with our focal points who belong in your companies and are your employees. We will do a much better job of trying to connect with those folks and support them. The request I have to you in this room who apparently don't know who your focal point is, ask yourself, why not? Is it because you've chosen not to, or is it because they're not effective? I don't know the reasons why, I just know that's an alarming state. We will do whatever we have to do to make focal points much more active inside your companies, but we can't do it without feedback. So if you've got the wrong people in the place because they're not as passionate or outgoing as they need to be, you need to correct that. We will help you do that. I want to share it is a real story. And I picked this up in my first week in the chair at Step Change. And if you're like me, and I think many of you are in the room, where if you see something, you own it till you do something with it, I couldn't let it go. So this is a very brief story. It's a real story. I was approached by an individual that works in our industry offshore. And he recounted an example of there had been a hydrocarbon release on one of your installations. It was found, it happened after post-shutdown. The plant was repressurized and there was a leak that wasn't identified for approximately a week. Doesn't matter the size of the bore of that pipe or the pressure in it. It still is going to leak a considerable amount of hydrocarbon in a week. It was identified and thankfully nothing had went wrong. So what's the first thing you do, apart from depressurizing your line with hydrocarbons, is you go about pressure testing your system to identify, with nitrogen, the volume of your escape for reporting purposes and to ensure that you've captured all the information. And you can learn from it, because this is what we need to be much better at, learning from close calls. And that's where the real information that can make us better stands. So this individual was well aware of this release, and he was also aware that the intention was to do a nitrogen check. However, the people that were doing the test and preparing to do the test weren't aware that this individual knew what was going on. And he happened to come across them as they were nipping the bolts up on the flange, pre-test. And when he questioned them on it, they weren't very receptive. A very short period after, he was asked to leave the platform for a genuine health check. Now, I can tell you that is not a story that should land well in this room, because that's a factual report that this individual has chose to share with me in my first week at Step Change, and asked for his anonymity and his employer's anonymity to be withheld. To be protected. Why? Because he lives in fear of continuing to work in this industry if he is courageous enough to try and interact when he sees something that is not correct. Thankfully, he's still employed. More concerningly is that actually happened in 2019 in our industry. Hydrocarbon release is truly one of our biggest, or should be one of our biggest fears for a major accident hazard. I don't want anyone in this room to go and try and find out who that was and where it was. I just want you to assume it could be in any of your businesses and what you would do to make it more comfortable for those individuals to bring those issues to the fore at your levels, OIM level and MD level. So that's a factual story. I've done my bit, as I said I would. So let's get back to what today was. Today was intended to be a gathering of senior leaders onshore and at OIMs, equivalents, asset managers from offshore. Feedback I've had is the OIMs would love to have a forum or a network that they could actually work together on some common industry initiatives or challenges. One of my visions for step change, short-term visions I may add, is to create that network. So if you're an MD and your OIM wishes to be part of this group, please put them forward. If you're an OIM and you really want to be part of something interesting and challenging and something can deliver along the lines of the MEH group, get in touch, because this will happen. Be part, play your part. Let's get to the speakers. Our regulator, Chris, I think he's up at the back now, has made it clear where he sees the challenges are from a regulatory point of view. I think it was very informative for Chris to be open enough to tell us that he finds stuff and his inspectors find stuff that aren't difficult to find on our installations. We've just heard from Stuart, I think it was, our quality of our audits should improve, not the number. If we're not finding the things in advance of the inspectors, don't bother auditing. It's a waste of time and resource. Really start questioning your assurance groups and your quality management groups about what they're actually going out to achieve. Chris is doing a custodian's job at keeping us on our toes and safe, and it was good of him to share that with us. Phil, as ever, I've heard him talk 3 times now, and I could listen to him again tomorrow. I love his candid approach, his honesty, his openness to accept that they're not the best and they're not perfect, but at least he's trying. It was encouraging to hear from Stuart again that some of the stories and initiatives that Phil shared in the room are things that he would consider taking inside Apache. There should be no competitive edge in sharing safety initiatives or safety tools that could benefit our folks going home safe. So thanks for your candidness, Phil. We heard from Leslie, who has had an absolute wealth of experience at the legal side of some of the most tragic events that have happened in our industry. Hopefully you all grasp the enormity of that from a reputational cost and potentially industry damaging aspect. As Leslie rightly said, and I think I mentioned it earlier, we cannot afford to have another major incident in our industry, because regardless of which logo it happens under or which installation it's on, it will impact everybody in this business in the North Sea. Jim Maitland shared for the first time a very personal story around a tragic loss on a major accident that didn't happen on a production platform, but had impact on the industry at large. So let's not forget that it doesn't have to be a loss of hydrocarbon that really impacts our business. That's not the only thing we need to look out for. We have a well control issue. We had an world-changing environmental disaster in Macondo. Sadly, there were some people lost as well. We had Piper, where we lost an enormous amount of people. We've had the Alexander Keelings did the same. So our industry is impacted in many different ways, but the human ripple, as Jim referred to, will be with us till we leave this industry or this industry leaves us. So let's not allow memory fade or corporate memory to forget these things. They need to be up front in most of our days. I've enjoyed hearing what's went on today. It's been a well-organised event, well-attended. I think it's been compressed. We make no apologies for that. Your time is valuable to us, and so is it to your organisations. So again, I want to thank those speakers for coming and being part of our day. I want to thank all the attendees who have taken time out of their very, very busy schedules. Again, I want to recognise the MEH team and the Step Change and Safety Support team for their efforts in pulling this together. And finally, but not least, to Craig and ACCA for allowing us access to this facility and the rooms we use for the breakouts. Thank you very much, Chris, for doing that. And to the audiovisual folks at the back and the cameramen, thank you very much for making this a successful event. I wish you all a safe and successful day and look forward to meeting with you again. Thank you very much.